Hello, and welcome to the latest installment of Critics and Cars Getting Home.
Tonight, we have just come out of seeing the film Living, which is an update on the Kurosawa film IKIRU.
Yes, it's directed by Oliver Hermanus. Is that
Yes.
how you pronounce it? He's a South African director who's made 3 South African films before this, starting with Beauty in 2011. I confess to not having seen any of them, and I believe you're in the same situation.
I think so. I'd have to look it up. But Living, the whole point of why you might have heard of it is that it's starring the wonderful Bill Nighy. And it's set in the olden days, as I like to call it, in London. In an era that almost makes you a little bit nostalgic for the olden days, except that, it was 1950s, 1955, and life was obviously still a bit tough. And Bill Nighy plays a character called Mr. Williams, who is widowed, lives with his son and daughter-in-law, and I don't think it's a spoiler to say that he finds out that his time on this mortal coil is limited, and so some things change in the way that he chooses to go on living.
Yes, and he's been nominated for an Academy Award for this. When are the awards? Are they soon?
They're later this month, later in March.
Okay, so maybe by the time it's gone to air, you might know.
Yeah, and well, here's the thing, right? I knew that he was one of those 5 men who were nominated for Best Actor. And look, I have nothing against Bill Nighy. Sometimes I don't like him when he plays that sort of Bill Nighy shtick, which this absolutely was not. But I didn't pay any attention at all to the fact that he was nominated for Best Actor. And I remember when we read the list, I was like, well, he doesn't deserve it or need it. And then watching this film, I think I changed my mind.
Yeah, so there's certain films that one tends to judge a book by its cover, and there's a few for me. British period pieces, judge a book by its cover. Remakes of classic films, largely unnecessary. Films where the Academy Award nomination goes to an actor, but not to the writer or director. Big crazy performances that are actor showcases that are not very good films. Period pieces again, and then it's there's just so many of these things that come through a year that feel like they're just the grist for the mill for the cinemas that cater to the over 65s.
That's right,
and that are perfectly accomplished, bland. Fine, this movie fucking rules.
Yeah.
Apologies to
Can we still put that on our YouTube channel with F words?
We'll find out.
It is absolutely stunning. And not just, you see, then I thought, well, because as the film starts, you think, wow, Bill Nighy really is amazing. Maybe he does deserve this Academy Award nomination. But the beautiful thing is, it isn't. I have reviewed films where there is one person who is the greatest thing in it and the rest of it is really meh. And everything about this film, from the cinematography to the score, to all of the supporting performances, and I couldn't name you a soul. I mean, I could now because I've seen the credits, but I don't think we know any of those people from anything in particular.
I'm sure we'll look them up on Letterboxd and discover, they were 6th billed on that film we saw 4 years ago.
Right.
Kind of faces.
But they are, every single one of them, to a man and to a woman, absolutely stunning, I thought.
So,
Tom Burke.
Yeah, Tom Burke is the one face that you would know
Yes.
who appears in a pivotal sequence and then disappears.
Yes.
In a very appropriate kind of level for his appearance. So I just want to jump back because one of the very first films when I was getting out of university, I was really into music, but I'd heard that old films were kind of good too, and maybe this was something I should look into. That I ever went to see was this film. And
Oh wait, you mean IKIRU?
IKIRU, the original. Yeah, sorry, the
Yeah,
original Kurosawa film. And it is very precious to my heart, and that was one reason that I have not had much hope for a remake. And
Sometimes, when something is incredibly special, you think, why on earth would I want to watch another version of this?
Yeah, and also, it's a Japanese film, and moving it to Britain felt superfluous. And what I'd be curious to see if it felt Japanese to you in any way, because it's the writer who adapted it is Kazuo Ishiguro, and who also wrote Remains of the Day.
And it's a very Remains of the Day type film. Yeah. And this is so I hear you with the Japanese and the British, because it is a restrained or a repressed British emotions thing that's going on. And as you were about to say, and I rudely interrupted, but hey, that's marriage. The Japanese have a way of being quite sort of, I don't want to say repressed, but certainly playing things close to their chest, perhaps quite restrained, and particularly with challenging emotions. But then, of course, so do the Brits. And the Brits of the 1950s, the post-World War II years, absolutely more than anybody. So you've got everybody calling, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because the Japanese call one another Dillerman-san, and interestingly, in this film, this is middle-class white-collar workers calling one another Mr. Williams, Miss Harris through the whole thing, even though they are fundamentally...
There's even bowing at certain points and
right.
things. And it's amazing work of translation at a literary level of taking something that's completely of one culture and moving it to the other culture and taking everything that translates. And look, it's not just that cultural side of thing, it's also bureaucracy. One of the movies I thought of during this was Brazil. Not that it looks like it as much, but there's something Tom Stoppard-esque that came back to me with the Byzantine bureaucracy of the park department that our hero works in.
He works in the county hall, which is like the city council, and there absolutely is an almost laughable bureaucracy of passing around of folders. Well, actually, thank you for this. This doesn't actually apply to my department. You'll need to take it to Parks and Rec, or you'll need to take it up to sewage and whatever. And so yes, there is that sort of farcical avoidance of the MacGuffins, actually.
Yeah, it's something that I actually. There's been a few things in the news recently about various government agencies and their inabilities to get things done. And in a way, it's a very much a film of our time in that sense, even though it's probably a film of every time.
Well, I was going to say.
Sadly, nothing new under the sun.
I think it is, absolutely.
But in Wayne Brown's Auckland in 2023, it feels very relevant in a way that I didn't expect going in. The other thing I didn't expect was the style of the film, because it is so old-fashioned.
It's in 4:3 for starters, and there's a lot of grainy throwback photography, and then sort of black and white or sepia flashbacks and that sort of thing.
But even within that, like the way that he uses the camera, because some filmmakers will use certain things to sort of superficially evoke the era, but then I'll put in a 7-minute tracking shot or things like that.
Yeah.
And other people will do things in a very staid, locked down way.
Yeah.
But for instance, the shots with the trains at the beginning and the angles and all of that, it reminded me of Powell Pressburger and sort of people who were really pushing what you could do with very limited equipment in the late 40s and early 50s.
So it's still a period piece.
And it's somehow so old-fashioned.
Yeah.
It almost felt avant-garde without feeling like an Almodovar or a funkier filmmaker like Mark Jenkin or something who's taking old-fashioned stuff and mashing it up. And that level of distancing works so well for it because on one level, this kind of living your life experiencing nothing feels a very dated concept because, we're experiencing too much all the time. We're surrounded,
And yet, if anything, that absolutely makes it a film for our time because there is so much disillusionment and so much nihilism and the world's going to pot. Or even if you don't feel that it is, there is a sense that a lot of people aren't living their best lives.
Or that there's no hope for the future. And so this movie, pretty much expressly sets what do you know? What do you do when you know how long your future is? And what do you do with it? And is it worth doing? And does it change the lives of those around you? And
we won't give anything more of that away in terms of you going to see it. But it's an absolutely, I thought, stunning meditation on priorities and...
Yeah, it's as resonant now as it was then and will always be, I think. I mean, I would love to be proved wrong in a way because there's, profound things about how we live that would have to change for it to be, and I'd be happy for them to change. But
it's an immaculate film. That's the beautiful thing. So it isn't even just a timely message or a resonant message. It's not even just a stunning performance and quite an understated performance on Bill Nighy's part as well, which will be part of the brilliance of it. And it isn't even just beautifully shot and scored. The music reminded me of Michael Nyman's The Piano. It reminded me of Rachmaninoff in Brief Encounter. It reminded me of Death in Venice. So those are the feelings that you're getting. It was a very visceral film without there being fights and gun fights and kind of, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to Powell and Pressburger and those kinds of films, and you look at the 40s and 50s and how much they think about where to put the camera.
That's right.
And what the shot actually means. Those early shots when they're in their office and, you know, the frame's about, you know, there to there, and their heads come up to this, and the piles of paper come up to here,
Yeah.
and then the bars of the window come up to that,
Yeah.
and those kind of shots just say so much, and it's just going on all the time, but not in an overwhelming way, just in a way that always suits the story and its themes. I
couldn't recommend it more highly.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, we are going to drive safely home now. We hope you've enjoyed this stationary edition of Critics and Cars Getting Home.